after the assassination attempt on the former president, there were just, I'd call it near universal calls to lower the temperature when it comes to our political discourse in the United States. I kind of knew it wouldn't last very long. It was even shorter lived than I thought it would be. You've already seen the Donald Trump's a threat to democracy, a threat to the very fabric of our country start to creep back into the conversation. In fact, here in Washington state, who is probably the front runner in the race to replace Bob Ferguson and be our next attorney general, just put out his latest campaign ad. Let's watch it together, shall we?
It's a real threat. We all feel it. Donald Trump could actually be president again, threatening our democracy and freedoms, including a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions. I'm Nick Brown. As a JAG officer, prosecutor, and U.S. attorney, I fought to protect our values. And that's what I'll do as Attorney General, because I'm not afraid to take on Donald Trump or anyone who threatens who we are in Washington.
Nick Brown, Democrat for Attorney General.
For the love. So a few things there. We already took down Moncadigra's campaign. I think our reporting on Moncadigra lying about being a prosecutor has probably nullified her chances of becoming the next attorney general. So I guess now we need to move on to Nick Brown. I have liked Nick Brown over the years. I mean, he's filled a couple different roles. He's always seemed to be perfectly reasonable, certainly not on the far left end of the spectrum. But this is Bob Ferguson 2.0. First of all, just a couple days after Donald Trump is almost assassinated, you're out on social media saying my first political ad of the campaign, and you start it by talking about Donald Trump being a threat to our democracy and our freedom. We already had this conversation. Nicole has reached out to Nick Brown's campaign and asked specifically, how is Donald Trump a threat to our democracy and our freedom? Like, let's be specific, and you can talk about the various ways that you believe he is a threat to the very fabric of our country and everything we hold dear. So clearly it didn't take very long for at least Nick Brown to decide that that kind of rhetoric is perfectly fine to run in a campaign. But I would also say, and I would reiterate something that I said on the show a couple weeks ago, and in fact, I wrote an op-ed about it for the News Tribune and a couple other McClatchy papers. If you read it, the headline of that op-ed, Democrats say democracy is in peril, so why don't they stand up to Bob Ferguson? I simply refuse to take seriously any Democrat in Washington state who says Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy and Republicans are a threat to our democracy, who completely ignore Bob Ferguson asking the Secretary of State of his own political party to break election law for him. You can't have it both ways. And this goes for any Republicans or any Democrats who want to act with moral hypocrisy. I said it of Republicans who acted like January 6th was no big deal after the whole summer of ranting and raving, rightfully so, about the riots in the name of social justice across the country. And then on the flip side, Democrats ignored those riots. And then January 6th was wall to wall all over the media. It's all Democrats were talking about. So there's no moral consistency here. They're both bankrupt. Now, if Nick Brown wants to come out, I think you included this in your questions. We asked how he feels. I haven't seen him say anything publicly about it. Now, I could have missed it. I don't read every single tweet that Nick Brown puts out, but I feel like it would have been flagged for me had he condemned Bob Ferguson asking the Secretary of State to change the order on the ballot in the governor's race. So we asked, okay, you're talking about Donald Trump threat to democracy. How about a clear and present undercutting of democracy from the guy you're trying to replace? So it all just falls on deaf ears to me. And hopefully there are more Americans who, as these, again, the old style of pre-assassination attempt campaigning against Donald Trump is going to be the exact same as post-assassination attempt campaigning against Donald Trump. In fact, we've already seen it from Biden, who's like, well, I'm going to say it if it's true. Okay. So I hope there's more Americans who are going to see that now and start to realize that it's just unhinged. It's fear-mongering. You can absolutely criticize specific things that Donald Trump has done. You can absolutely criticize January 6th and whether you believe he was firm enough with protesters and all of that. You can absolutely, criticize the actions he took after the election to try to challenge it, whatever you want. But let's be specific and let's not make these overarching claims about our democracy and everything we hold dear in peril, because that's what happens. That's what leads mentally unhinged people to pick up a rifle and try to shoot the former president in the head.